Hi, and welcome to Decoded, Talent and Industry Insights track, where we will explore how tech leaders are navigating the evolving world of AI and team transformation. In today's episode, Communicating Change, How to Talk about AI Inside and Out, I'm joined by someone who sits at the intersection of storytelling, strategy, and digital innovation, Ted Novak, Managing Director and Partner at Clique Studios. TED helps organizations not only to adapt to change, but communicate it with clarity, confidence, and creativity. Welcome and hi, Ted.
Great to see you this morning.
So, for those who don't yet know Click, how would you describe the work that you do with your clients?
I like to say, and it's evolved over time. Back in the day, we were known for building websites, and we still build a lot of websites. What we found is where we're originally thinking of that, I think the world thought of that as a design and technology project. It's more than that. It's a positioning project. So I take a look at the work that we do fits in two different categories. We're either helping customers with our clients rather, with their product or their positioning. So on the product side, we are stepping into either an application or internal systems they have, observing how people are using that versus what are the goals of the organization. And typically, it's how do we make this work better, either by enhancing technology or in many cases, enhancing the usability of the tool. So to put that in context, we work with large enterprise organizations that are using something like Salesforce to run their entire customer service desk, and they want to make that an even better experience than it is today for their end customer. So it'll be an art of understanding what types of calls are coming in, what systems are they going into, and how can we bring that all forward and design an interface to have that extremely accessible. So we do a lot of work on that category in tools like Salesforce. We do a lot of internal portals, or we are redesigning things like SharePoint. And the majority of it is with proprietary systems, because if you have a team that can do design, UX, and front-end development, you can pretty much reface almost any application that's out there. So that's the product side of the house. The other side of the house is in positioning, and the way you introduce our company represents that very well. So a lot of times this gets into website development, and usually when an organization is redoing their website, it's for a reason. Either their current site isn't performing, which means it isn't connecting with their customers, so it's not driving revenue for them or driving lead generation or whatever their conversion might be, recruiting, that sort of thing. And oftentimes it doesn't represent what the organization has become. And I'd say a lot of our clients, I like to say, they're successful despite their website, which is the perfect combination, because it also makes it challenging because they're already doing very well. But how do we understand what's making them successful outside of their website, and where's the gap? So we do a lot of workshops in terms of understanding who their competition is, how they're presenting themselves. We talk from everyone from customer service reps to sales, the people on the front lines of sales, to really understand what is that. A lot of times, sorry, I didn't finish that sentence, but a lot of times an organization, the value that they truly deliver is different than how the market perceives what they deliver. And so especially in the website world, practices like usability, which is something that we do, breeds a lot of best practices. And best practices, when everyone's reading the same book, everything starts looking the same, right? Everything starts sounding the same. Everything starts feeling the same. What we help organizations do is understand what is at the same, right? So that there's a degree of familiarity when people come to the website, what are best practices, et cetera. But then how do we make them stand out in that conversation? So often when we're doing a design and development project, it gets very deep into communication strategy, content development, and then also handling all the things you have to these days and should, such as page performance, SEO, and then of course accessibility. So largely we're doing that with public facing digital assets. And I think as I had mentioned, and on time we're starting to do a lot of that in internal communication platforms as well, because when you are working with a remote or hybrid workforce, this is how people are interfacing, right? So that's a little bit of an overview of the types of work that we do.
Awesome. So essentially, you help companies create their own image and project the image in the way that they would like the world and internal stakeholders to see them.
Yeah, 100%. And more than just how they would like it, the way that truly gets the essence out so that the people that they're trying to attract and or convert also understand it. And I think that's the art.
That's awesome. So, obviously, you have led many companies through big times of change, whether those changes were internal, external, and you help them navigate that communication with their internal and external stakeholders. What excites you the most about the current wave of change around AI?
Yeah, I love the way that you phrase that. What excites me the most, because my answer for that is might be interesting. What excites me the most is there is no leader yet. AI right now is a topic that even my 11-year-old daughter understands that it's a thing, right? So it's out there. It's what I call a boardroom word, right? It's coming up in every organization. Some are adopting it. Some are, I should say, at this point, most are adopting it, or at least know that they're going to need to adopt it at some point versus ignoring it. And then back to your word exciting, because it's so new and there's not yet a defined leader in the market. There's a lot of opportunity for organizations to even dip their toes in. And I tell a lot of younger engineers, this is an industry or an industry that is so new that you have an opportunity on even small projects that you're working on to very quickly become seen as an expert in this field, because not many are, at least in the client delivery side yet, because of how new it is. And I say new, it's been around a bit at this point, but being adopted and worked into people's processes and understood. Larger and smaller organizations, most of the time when somebody's adopting new technology, it's a decision being made by one or a group of people in the company, but sponsored by one person in the organization to bring this technology in. And a big part of that decision is keeping their job, right? And looking like they made a good decision. There was a saying back in the day, no one gets fired for hiring IBM. I think now it's probably turned into no one gets fired for hiring Salesforce, right? Because everyone understands that it is largely adopted by other organizations. So as you play that into AI, I'm starting to see instances where how AI is being used. Once one organization sees how another one is, people start building a sense of comfort around it. And the other is anyone doing any sort of product development, which is a very messy space right now. Anything that you want to do in AI, there's at least 10 different companies claiming to have the tool, right? So we're in like this period right now where people are testing different things out and still learning what they want to do about it. Now, if you're in the services world or you're an engineer and you have some knowledge around the subject, that can create a lot of opportunities, because most organizations are looking for someone to help them understand that conversation in the context of their business, right? Back to the boardroom. We know AI is out there. We're going to have to do something. I heard so and so is doing this. Can we get someone in here to help us think this through? And so that's where there's just a ton of opportunity. And for us, we spend a lot of time getting smart on things like that. I'm sure we'll have some projects that have elements and then we end up using AI as a tool, but we also have kind of a subdivision of Clique, same people, it's just a kind of a subdivision so that it feels different, called Clique Labs. We do a lot of experiments with all sorts of things, but AI is a huge one. In fact, it's a directive that all of our teams have at Clique to incorporate AI into their workflow and to complete AI projects.
Love it. Love the initiative. Absolutely. And so, what are your thoughts on, obviously, a lot of companies are adopting AI, like yourself, experimenting with it, and now they find some tools that are really useful and they want to shout about it to the world. So, what do you see the biggest common mistakes that companies make communicating about digital transformation or AI?
Yeah, in terms of communicating it, there's a couple. So there are some organizations that promoting their adoption or use of AI gives them some edge, right? Because they're in industries that are very mature on the topic. There are others that they see it as, you see this in creative sometimes as well. They don't want to say they're using AI because there's an implication that the value statement that they used to have, talent and production of creative assets, is now something they're typing in as a prompt and getting the same result. So in terms of organizations that are communicating, I think the biggest ones are the organizations that aren't being honest about it, right? So you see that one category that has adopted it, they might have done some small project, like used AI to do an email campaign or something like that. And they're beating their chest, yeah, we're using AI every day. We use it all the time for everything. But in reality, they're just experimenting with it still. And I think that can be risky because if they're not truly adapting it for specific processes and workflows that are improving the product and value that they do, it can get over communicated in the marketplace. And then it's seen as you're talking about it because people are going to listen if you mention the word AI. And we've seen this with almost every trend that has come through the internet. People do a small little thing to say we're in the club. What was it? The metaverse, right? Everyone had a little thing they did. Yeah, we're in the metaverse. And then there was companies that were actually building virtual worlds and doing all kinds of interesting, cool stuff. So you've got that on that side. And then I think the other side in terms of miscommunications are folks that downplay it instead of promoting how they are using it. And where I've seen that most are in organizations where the product that they create is something that can come out in a prompt, right? That's the easy consumer understood piece of AI. And there's a fix to that, which is a lot of those industries are based on billable hours, right? Consulting, law firms, even what I do, design, development, et cetera. And I think the missed opportunity is showing how much more you can do because of what AI enabled you to do, if and where it was appropriate to be used.
Nice. So sounds like focusing on the positive outcome for the public and for your consumers.
Yeah, and also just demystifying it. Because I feel there's a lot of times that an AI-enabled tool for X, and then you get in there and you're like, this isn't really AI. I've seen this before, right? Did a lot with list builders and things like that. I get calls and pitched for that all the time. We have an AI enabled, it's going to find you all the clients and email them all. And there are tools that actually do that, but it's almost overused in some of those industries where AI is sensationalized as being the tool that's going to make it better. So I think if there's an honest communication about it, which is probably true with everything or anything, that's where it's being handled appropriately, right? We've had project work where we have leveraged AI, and it was a big communication on how we did it. And in some cases, we didn't sign up for work thinking AI was going to be involved, but we would come across some unexpected challenges for both us and the client to get a big body of work done. And that's one of the first places we look in terms to how we can scale a delivery. To put that into context, we had a client is a major candy brand, consumer candy brand, and we were redoing their website. And it hadn't been done in a while. So we knew going in there would be a graveyard of pages and things like that, that even though we scanned everything going in, we'd find something that we didn't know. One of the things that we did know and had an approach for it was every single candy wrapper on every single piece of candy that are distributed worldwide has QR code on it. And that code is there for someone to scan, and it goes to a page on the website for nutritional information for that piece of candy or that brand of candy. We're like, all right, cool. We know we're gonna have to bring over a couple thousand pages. We know the URLs are gonna have to stay the same so that all the scan codes still work. We're not gonna redo all that. And we've done things like that before, bulk migrations, that sort of thing. There's one catch. What we didn't factor in at the time was that the pages that these were getting scanned to, number one, were inconsistent because it had been built up over years. So some of the automated processes required another level of QA to get them normalized. And then the main thing, though, is that the nutritional facts were being presented in images. And an image with information is not accessible. Took a look at this. We're like, all right, a couple thousand pages. I think we calculated it out to be about 240 hours of manual labor for us to take each one of these, recode it into HTML and everything else. And so the team looked to AI for that, used a couple of the OpenAI tools, developed some APIs, and built a couple of different agents. One would take all the files, normalize them. It used OCR to extract all of the text and content out of the images, rebuilt them, basically built a database out of all the information, all these images. And what came out of that, number one, we were able to condense that job from 240 hours to a day of developing these tools and probably a day of then utilizing them in terms of processing all that information. The engineer did it, even built QA agents as well that would relearn and re-QA every time we were doing things so that if it went through a pass and missed something, it wouldn't then be programmed to miss it every time. He could probably explain that better than I could. It's pretty fascinating. And then also there's some side benefits out of that. So a project where we're just supposed to make a website, sure, we use that. You could argue that we used AI to accomplish something that we were on the hook for, even though it was different than what we thought. But there's an added benefit too. That organization now, for the first time ever, has a queryable database across every single SKU, nutritional information and ingredient across their entire database, which is something they hadn't had previously. And in fact, very shortly after that, they're doing an integration with another organization where they had to figure out how to get product information from their system to the other system, and had a big project carved out for that. And instead, we jumped on and had a phone call and said, "What do you need?" And we were able to basically export that same day. So I think we actually did it in a week because we had to get to it first. But so I think those are some of the good. I told a story of a use of AI, but is in the context of how you're communicating use of AI. We were very clear about, hey, we got a thing here, we can solve it this way, and made it exciting with the client work. And I honestly, I think maybe when AI first came out and people were first starting to use it in delivery, I think they were hesitant to share with their clients if they were using it or not. And I don't think anyone who was doing that was doing it to be sneaky, but it's hard. You don't know how it's going to be accepted on the other side, and you don't understand how it's going to implicate the services that you were hired to do. I can tell you, if I hired someone to do a big project for me and they gave it to me the next day, which I should be happy. Wow, I got this even faster. I can start using it. I'd be like, wait a second. I might question the effort that went in there. And that's going to be one of the challenges that we're all navigating, is if you are hired to deliver something of quality to someone, the sooner they get it, the faster they can start getting ROI on it, right? That should be good news. But the challenge is what's the value of that, right? So if you wanted a big, awesome thing and you were going to spend $10 on it and you're expecting to get it a month from now, wouldn't you be happy to spend the $10 you committed to and get it today? And to me, even on the consumer buyer side, it's kind of because there's a belief that, which makes sense, that if things are easier to produce, costs should come down as well. And so I think that's the other conversation that is getting interesting. And the folks that are navigating it are being, so I will say this, we did not charge extra for the work that we did with that client when they were able to use the database. Maybe we should have. But that's becoming an interesting way, or an interesting conversation that is even new for our organization, is how do you bill for use of AI time to produce something that you used to have to do manually? And I think that will get figured out the more and more it's adopted.
This is awesome. I was exactly going to say, how do you then take case studies like this, like you just explained, and how do you then portray the value of what you did to your other potential customers? How do you
Yeah.
position yourself without having to drop the price?
Yeah. So it is interesting. So one of the things so probably all organizations, including mine, we're just so transparent with our pricing and things like that. Not that it's not transparent to do value-based pricing. So value-based pricing is, I think, it's a way that a lot of service organizations would love to be, right? Because when you're in hourly, it sounds great. If I've got margin built into my hours, we're going to be good to go, right? But the challenge there is on both sides. Hours can add up. That can get expensive. That can degrade the value, right? So you're constantly, I find myself, if we go over hours and stuff, we're eating a lot of hours, right? Because you need to take some responsibility typically if something was more than you thought it was going to be for your client. Not in all situations, but some situations. So then there's this idea of value-based pricing, which is done a lot. Some shops, I think, exclusively do it. We're getting better at it, which is more so focusing on what, for an organization making an investment in you or a service or a tool. We've all heard these types of sales pitches before. So let's take a look at something like, I'm sorry, let me answer the question better. How are we addressing that? It is forcing us to look at the services we do more from a value-based perspective, which is not something that we would traditionally do, especially when someone is saying, hey, I need a new website, or we're looking to improve our interfaces, make them more effective, etc. A lot of times organizations will shy away from that because the gig is to work through it. And like as soon as you start tying things to metrics, it changes the perspective a little bit. We started tying things to metrics, right? If we do this, we can expect to reduce the amount of time for customer service by X amount. If we do some marketing all the time, right? So what is a conversion worth to you, restaurant that's trying to book tables? Okay, great. If your average revenue or profit from a customer coming and having steak at your restaurant is $50, I would imagine $15 to get them in the door makes a lot of sense, right? And so that type of mindset is what I think everyone's trying to navigate from an AI perspective, because the end value that customers are getting is the same and sometimes better than the end value of what they're getting doing some things manually, and they're getting it faster. Should it be the exact same cost if you did it manual? Probably not, but it certainly isn't something that should blend into hourly type of thing. And I think another trend that we will start to see is reusability of some of these types of tools, right? Which is no different than software sales today, right? Every time I keep using Salesforce, everyone knows the name, but every time you sign up for license Salesforce, wow, that's expensive. They didn't just build that for you, right? They built that a while ago. They continue to support it. They continue to grow it. And the value of that to your organization is what that cost is based around, right? So I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the services models. That's a prediction, but we'll see.
Nice. And as we're moving at more and more adoption within the companies, we're seeing some companies popping up and announcing themselves as AI first. And you can tell in the industry there's a bit of resistance to that from people and probably some skeptical views on that. How do you see how companies could best advertise the fact that they're AI first?
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about. I feel like I see a new announcement of that every day. We're only interviewing if we've proven that AI can't do the job and that type of stuff. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. The problem there is that's putting AI kind of versus people message instead of positioning as a tool. So AI first said, who's second? Me, the employee, the candidate, the interview, the client. So I think that what I would anticipate is with some of those organizations, I think depending on the markets they're in, there are some people that say, heck yeah, because whatever they put together, this is going to be cheap for me. Wow, look at, they're just cutting all this cost and everything. And there's a lot of different opinions on that throughout history, right? As means of production have continued to change, right? We're way out of the times of factories where you had to have a factory to work, and therefore all the workers had to come work for you. Some Karl Marxism there. Now it means a production is computer, now computer and people, now it's potentially computer and AI. So I think on the organizations that are communicating that, they probably know what they're doing. It always looks like a mistake to a lot of us because it sounds ridiculous to some of us, right? If you're putting AI first, it sounds like you're trying to reduce your job force, or it sounds like a greedy company, right? Or not good with people. I think the folks that are probably promoting that are doing that for a reason, because their target audience probably sees some value in having that attitude. I'm not on that camp. And the reason, and I almost don't think anyone should be, because it implies that you can have AI instead of humans without acknowledging the fact that at least right now, you need someone that knows how to leverage it in your system, or I'm sorry, in your company. It's just like software. You can't go and buy a new CRM, flip the switch, and now it works. Now you're getting all the value. In fact, there's large scale implementation projects for those types of things. Not some CRM's a little bit easier, but like an ERP system to run your business, a website. We've been doing a lot of projects with Webflow, which is just an awesome CMS that kind of really got great over the years. And it is a CMS, much like a Wix, where you can put your quarter into the website, turn it on, and you have a system, and you've got a CMS. But it's not going to be effective for your business like that. And so I think a lot of the AI first kind of misses that piece, and we'll see, but could be a turnoff to the folks that are becoming experts in that space to get in there and work with the businesses. So for us, when we talk about it and we talk about it publicly, it's about adopting it. right? We do the same thing internally with our teams. We know that it is a tool. We know that it is a tool that's still being explored. Like I said previously, we explore it with experiments. And then when we have appropriate situations that aren't adding cost to our clients, we will use it to help get the job done and see if it can create more value. But yeah, all of our communications about it are not that first. And it might also be the perspective that we have, because the examples that I shared where we used it, I had a hyper intelligent engineer doing that. They didn't do it. But yeah, it's an interesting question. And you see it on LinkedIn every day, and then everyone rallies behind and gets all upset. And anytime I see that, I'm like, especially because it's more than one organization, I think they've got some strategic reasons for communicating like that, even though it's not the way that I view it.
Yeah, totally. And I myself see some big players advertising things like this. But on the flip side, then, companies who advertise their human first, what are the risks in this day and age for those companies?
Yeah, if you're strong on either side of it, and I believe in being strong on a statement and not wagering in the middle, but optics has a lot to do with it. So a lot of those organizations, they might be saying the same thing that I just attempted to say, which is, at least for now, we need humans to help us understand, program, leverage AI the right way in an organization. So the way that it does good, right, and isn't doing bad, and is improving our lives, either in the way that we work or the products that we're putting out there. If you say that too strongly, it can sound like resistance to change, resistance to AI. And I don't think that is a smart position. Again, depends on the type of work you do. If we were artists, well, even the art community is using AI, but there are some crafts, right, that the purpose of the craft is to create something very human authentic, right? I know AI can create music. I am not in that camp. It ruins the point of it. But for organizations that are in technology, the human first message, I think, is a good one. I sound like a criminal to say something different, but I still don't think that's accurate or a good way to be communicating about AI, because what it sounds like and can feel like is resistance, which can make you sound ignorant to the situation. And honestly, we all know is not sustainable, right? To be ignorant to AI, so it'd be like accounting firms. I don't know when the calculator was invented, but I bet the abacus people were worried when the calculator came out. And then there's still I know accountants that live in big houses still today. There's still always that service around it.
Absolutely. Great point. Thank you. And looking a bit more inwards now, obviously, not only your customers will hear about those AI implementations, but also your staff, your all internal stakeholders. And massive shifts, a lot of talk out there that it's going to impact everyone's jobs and so on. So, how do you then go about getting buy-in from within your own employee base on these new shifts? How do you communicate? How do you get them excited about them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in general, any shifts within our organization, we use a phrase that we never want anyone to feel like we're doing something to them when there's a shift, right? And transparency about shifts and why you're doing things or what you're looking at, and just helping an organization know where leadership's head is at, I think is just critical in having a healthy organization. And AI fits right into that. For us, we set annual goals everywhere at a company level, and those goals then trickle down to our different teams: project management, design, marketing, development, UX, etc. And for the past couple of years, we have had adopt AI as one of those goals. This is word a little bit more clever than that. But the reason we did that is because it says we're doing something about this, we're getting into it. But what it's done is it has made our team a part of that conversation. So now part of their daily job is not to sit around, do their job, and be worried about how AI is going to impact the business. They all have permission slips to explore how they can use AI to do their job or our job better. And so instead of it being a threat, it put us all on the same side. How do we leverage this? My company is happy that I'm spending time during my day that they are paying for to experiment, look, and explore. And it's done a couple things. Number one, there's certainly, I would be shocked. I can just say with 100% confidence, there's no one in my organization sitting around saying, oh my gosh, Ted and Derek are going to replace me because of this new AI tool. That's just not existent. Part of that is because we have a lot of communications in general, but the other part is because we've been very clear on what we are looking to do. So we've got three values that we run our organization by. We've got build something. To here at the end of the day, we're here to make stuff, right? Be a student and a teacher, right? So in every opportunity, we want to help others learn, but we also know that we are learning from our clients and our colleagues and partners. And the last one is make somebody else's job easier, right? Is something that we are always constantly thinking of. And AI fits right into that model. And in fact, that's basically how we're looking at it, right? If we're able to use it to create in something that makes sense in the context of the work we're doing, using it for learning, right? A lot of people are using it for research. We'll do it as a lot of things. We'll do it in parallel for things where we're using our own research and analysis, mass surveys. We'll go through and find trends, and then we'll throw it into some AI models and see what trends it finds, right? And are we seeing the same stuff and that sort of thing? So if we're ever testing it with client work, we're doing it in parallel instead of replacing, because I still think there's risk in outsourcing your understanding of the work that you're doing. But then, the last one in terms of making someone's job easier, what's nice about that one is people are discovering ways to use AI and then sharing that within the organization. And I'm sure you're seeing this in your organization, but you have to, because if you use any sort of Zoom, Google, Microsoft chat call or a video call, I can't believe it's a chat call. It's like an old man video call. They've got these tools baked in for taking notes and things like that. And so that's starting to get used a lot more. But it all really comes down to those three values and how we're adopting it, which I guess are good three values because you can push anything through those three and have it make sense for your organization. So we've actually made it a requirement for our goals for each team to find ways to adopt and use it.
That is awesome. And tell me a little bit more about the playground that you have. That sounds like a very exciting thing.
Oh yeah. So I think I talked about that earlier. So Clique Labs, we actually have a dedicated website for it. And so what we did there, honestly, it was part something that we were always doing. And then because we're in the business of helping clients help people understand what they actually do, we're like, hey, we should do better than that. And so we've always had this adoption of self-learning and carving out time for that within our organization since the time that we started. And what I mean by self-learning, because a lot of people are doing self-learning, is time during your workday where you can work on something on your craft that's not in the context of client work. And the reason for that is particularly if you're building something, if you're creating something, if there's no customer on the other end, you're going to get to take the risks that you might not take in a client environment. You're going to move faster many times. So much delivery has to do with approvals, right? And getting in meetings and make sure everyone's on the same page before can I just build this website? And that's that should be like that in client delivery. But you don't have that if you don't have a client on the other side. And so we understood that kind of early on in our organization. And so would block out time in people's schedules and capacity to have time on our dime to do that because we saw the value from an educational standpoint. So our design team does things like monthly design challenges, and they're fun, right? Yeah, I think the last one that they just did, there was a restaurant out in Colorado that the other owner, Derek, was friends with. And so for the design challenge, they're like, hey, let's make new menus and all sorts of stuff and things like that, but without the client, right? Some of them are like, let's just reimagine something, or let's have a design challenge. Who can make the most interesting thing using 3D elements on a webflow site, right? That type of stuff. What Clique Labs was, there is basically a way of putting that all out there. Because what we realized is we had all this fun, cool, exciting stuff that we were learning from and getting inspiration from. Why don't we put that out there so that others could also enjoy that? So it's a lot of experimentation. Did you know you could do this? And so that's what Clique Lab really turned into, was we branded an internal activity that we do every month. I use design as an example. Engineering does it as well. They're playing with, I shouldn't say playing, but they're exploring with new technologies. That's where a lot of our AI learnings come from, is through Clique Labs and doing a lot of those experiments. And by putting that out there, we built its own website and everything else like that. It's got a Clique logo, but its own brand. Actually, no, it has a Clique Lab logo, and I think about it. And that was just really to kind of share that with others. but then also promote the concept, because I think it's important that organizations embrace those moments for people to grow themselves. A lot of organizations rely on them doing that outside of the workplace. And then you get into a lot of the work balance place. And I would argue, I know I do, a lot of folks from our team are working outside the business hours, exploring things as well. Having some time for that is a way that we're underscoring that's important. And then we care about individuals' personal growth in the crafts that they're doing.
And
So
how would you quantify or define the ROI on this to the business?
yeah, wow, that is a great question. We see it in the project work. Efficiency for us is not exclusively tied to how fast can you get something done in the time that you were given it to take. And I say efficiency because you said quantify and ROI, right? So if something is X an hour, how many hours did it take versus how many hours did we tell? Did we make money or did we not? So where we are seeing it is not just in work product, but in confidence in the type of work that's being put out there. And by having individuals or teams going through these perpetual motions of growth on their own through a lot of these experiments, it's getting them comfortable with what all the new topics are and just also ways of presenting the work with clients. And so where I am seeing tangible results is in the delivery with the client relationship. We're getting approvals much faster. We're getting folks saying, hey, this is great, this is exciting, more faster, which is not all tied to Clique Labs, but I hadn't thought about it until you asked that question, actually. Is the other advantage of the Clique Labs in that environment is people aren't, I said self-learning, but it's almost a miscommunication because they're working as teams. And so you have folks now working together on improving a craft, presenting to each other, right? Getting comfortable talking about the work, getting comfortable exploring different things with other people. And so it's been a side benefit, now I think about it, is you take that same group and now they're talking with a client or presenting work to a client. We've seen tangibly that those experiences, everyone's just more comfortable with those conversations. They're more comfortable kind of putting themselves out there, I think, too.
That's amazing. And how about things like staff satisfaction and retention, and even the attractiveness to become your employee?
Yeah. I think we had a couple 13-year anniversaries. I have somebody out on sabbatical right now, which I think is at a 7 or 10 year. I got to look at our policy. Yeah, we've had an incredible amount of, and we always have over the years. Of course, people leave eventually, sometimes maybe, but we haven't had a lot of high turnover in our group. And I think that's comes from activities like this. We talk to our teams a lot. We have a lot of review and upward feedback processes. And it is interesting. We are hybrid at this point, like many organizations. And so we do have some folks that are pretty virtual versus coming to an office every day. But the culture is still something that's talked about, even for new hires that have come in and still haven't met face to face with some folks. And I'd have to think that it has a lot to do with, again, Clique Lab is just one example, but we do a lot of things that are outside of just get the work done. And to me, that's why you work somewhere, is working with people that you like. There's a saying that a musician I play with says about picking bands that he's in. He's like, you either got to like the music, like the people, or like the pay. He's like, you got to have at least two. Otherwise, you do nothing. And so I'm hoping that we're delivering all three organization. But yeah, if that answers your question.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so that's amazing insights on both how to communicate all the big changes and shifts and how to get not only your customer buy-in, but also your internal stakeholder buy-in. So overall, if you had to say, what would be one shift that you would hope more leaders would make in how they talk about all these changes with their teams and with the outside world?
Yeah, I think number one, I think that there's a lot of reading, especially at the leader level. I heard this, right? They come back to the team. I'm trying to get better and getting smarter myself, right? The position that I'm in our organization, I am rarely, and probably to the benefit of everyone, hands-on keyboard coding, right? Back in the day, used to. And we do have leaders that do still code, our CTO, and that's why everyone loves them. So I think if you're in a position of making decisions, leaders should be doing a lot of their own research and also a lot of their own experimentation. the reason for that is number one, I think it's beneficial for if you're telling your organization to experiment, if you're telling your organization anything, I hope you're doing it too, right? And the other thing about that is it helps you understand the topics better, helps you understand the space better, helps you understand the conversations better as well. Purposely, I, like everyone else, is doing a lot of experimentation with ChatGPT and things like that. And how can I use it for my job? And how can I explore these other things? Everyone's doing that, something special. There's a lot of different resources out there to sign up, get newsletters, read about the trends, that sort of thing. Keep an eye on it. And then the other thing is, one of the things that we do internally is I have quarterly check-ins with my engineering team, specifically to have them tell me what they are hearing and seeing. So I think it's super important that these decisions and the ways that it's being adopted is not a top-down thing. And it can't exclusively be a bottom-up thing either if you want to make the right decisions. So I think I don't know if it's a change, because I would hope a lot of organizations are handling it this way. And I'm guessing we aren't unique, but I will just underscore that I think the more that you are encouraging exploration and adoption and demonstrating that on both a leadership position, as well as if you're asking your teams to do it on a team position, but then having that open conversation on what each other are finding, because it's interesting. There's been moments where I've uncovered things that other teams are like, oh man, we didn't realize we could use this tool for that. And I think that's just helpful because you're drinking your own Kool-Aid in one regard, but it also can be a protective way from leadership, or for leadership as well. If you're running a business and you don't know anything about the decisions that you're saying, yeah, sounds good, you're not in a place to assess risk, right? Which is something we haven't really talked about, but definitely needs to be. A lot of service teams, you're putting something out in the market that is now that customer's product or thing, right? And there's already enough risk in the services industry for putting something out there that isn't secure or isn't accessible or is, a myriad of different things. It's technology, right? Can be used for evil, right? So when you're starting to use new technology and things like that, understanding the risk of those is huge. And you don't want necessarily to have all that burden on one particular area, such as your team, because that makes it hard to explore if everything's risky. I'll say it one more time, and then I'll land the plane on your question. I think it is important for organizations, for leadership to understand, do the work, right? Like, you haven't had an opportunity to do work and learn a new thing in a long time, maybe, right? Do it. Get your hands dirty, experiment with it. There's a lot of very accessible AI tools out there. Get past oh my gosh, I put this into ChatGPT and I can look at what it did. Like, really effectively use some of these tools. And then the same with the teams, but then have those open conversations and share and listen to what others are doing. And I think that's where, especially, most organizations have folks that are craft out there communicating with clients, even if the craft folks do during projects. There's a little bit of art of understanding what you're hearing in the market and what people are looking for and what is capable. And I think if you're doing those two things, you're going to be quicker to identifying those opportunities.
Amazing. Thank you. So thank you very much, Ted, for such a thoughtful conversation. And it's very clear from speaking to you that adoption throughout the organization is key, but leaders do have to set the example, that people should really consider how they want to position themselves in terms of external communications on AI, and transparency in all the communication is definitely key. And of course, it's just as important how we communicate the change as the change itself. And you've definitely given us a very powerful lens into doing it better. So thank you very much. I
Okay, I
appreciate
hope
your
so.
time. And to everyone, going to see you in the next episode.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Decoded. And if you're a tech leader navigating the evolving world of AI and organizational design, or if you're someone looking to break into tech, change careers, upskill, or simply find the right job support, we're here to help. At Coding Temple, we specialize in talent pipeline advice and workforce upskilling, preparing people and teams for the future of work through hands-on training and our dedicated careers camp. Thanks again for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time as we explore more ways to thrive in a tech-driven world.